Paycheck.
Hey guys.
Did you miss me already? Alright, let's get into this. Because of the recent controversy around the Disney film Red and the menstruation and stuff, I decided to make this video. No, actually, I decided to make this video because I saw Catherine Isabel doing my Being Human recap. And because the actress seemed familiar, I of course looked her up and recognized none of her films. But there was one film that piqued my interest, and it's Ginger Snaps. Now, personally, I'm more a vampire guy, but I can handle werewolf films too. And apparently it wasn't that big. It came 22 years ago out, which is just crazy to think. And I mean, I wasn't that old in the 2000s. When this film came out, I was like 3 or 4 years old. But yeah, I decided to watch it today and to see what it's all about. Now, there are a lot of metaphors that you can use when you're telling a story with werewolves. You know, with vampires, it's more about loneliness and rekindling your humanity, while with werewolves, you have this whole thing about losing control and having to try to stick to your humanity. It can also be used as a metaphor for sexual transmitted diseases, but in this case, it's more about puberty and growing up, which makes it a little bit more interesting. Now, the movie starts off with establishing the sisters Ginger and Bridget, and while the film is called Ginger Snaps, and Ginger herself plays a pivotal role in it, it's more about her sister Bridget. Now, in the beginning, Ginger is the more dominant sibling, so to speak, while Bridget likes to stay in the background and is more of an instigator for things. Like, she weaponizes her sister, and she's well aware of that, but still kind of critical. Now, then we get this cool opening where they show you their art, so to speak, and morbid curiosity, so to speak, by which I mean that they like portraying photos of death and suicide, with mostly Ginger taking the role of the victims while Bridget photographs that. And throughout the beginning, we get hints that there is something in the woods, because a lot of dogs are getting killed. So if you're a dog friend, this movie is probably not yours, because a lot of dogs are getting killed in the neighborhood, and you don't know it at the beginning, but this is the werewolf doing, and you don't get to see who the werewolf actually is. I think that's something explained in the sequels, because surprisingly enough, the film garnered medium reviews when it came out, but aside from like professional people who reviewed the film, it garnered a small following, similar to the movie The Cult, which came around the same time. And what I personally really liked is the dynamic between the two sisters. I think that's a very strong point. Catherine Isabel and Emily Perkins, who portray Ginger and Bridget respectively, are doing a great job of portraying those characters who are those loners, outsiders really. They don't dress like the other teenagers, they don't behave like the other teenagers, except for the smoking. There's a lot of smoking in that film, and how this bond is affected by the fact that Ginger is slowly transforming into a werewolf, plus getting her period, while actually the werewolf thing, like I said in the beginning, is more of a metaphor for puberty and getting your menstruation. And there are not many films that even depict teenage girls like being on their period, or the whole subject of period is not really that depicted in media. It's sort of taboo, which is weird from my perspective, but anyway. And then, of course, the struggle, because Ginger is on one hand liberated, but also afraid of what she will do with all this power that she now has at her behest or disposal. While for Bridget is, how far can she go for her sister? How much longer can she risk not having agency in her life and just following of what her sister does, doing what her sister tells her to do? And yeah, yes, but it's very well portrayed. There's barely anything negative I can say about this film. It's well shot. It has this nice 90s griminess, despite being released in the 2000 or in 2000. It still has this griminess, like I said. The effects are quite nice, and with werewolves you get, of course, the whole other aspect that you can, of course, attribute to puberty, which is body horror. Your body is transforming, you get hairs where you didn't have hair before, and all this is also not just the way the movie explains these things. It's not such a subtle hint to puberty, but it's also funny because Ginger is literally growing hair where you're not supposed to have it. They're taking a few liberties with the werewolf mythology. So, for example, the transformation is far longer. So Ginger transforms over the whole movie and only at the end becomes a full werewolf, which is kind of nice, saving the best for last. The werewolf design is not that terrible either. It's not among my favorite. I think the design they used in Van Helsing, the movie Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman, is possibly my favorite, and the werewolf in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban is my least favorite, and this is somewhere in the upper echelon of those two design choices. Aside from that, Ginger isn't that much of a likable character, and that's also kind of the point. The relationship between the two sisters is, on one hand, very strong and very connected, but it's also not a healthy relationship, as they do a couple of crimes, and by crimes mostly Ginger and Bridget covering up for her. And we also get later funny scene where we see that even a mother is absolutely willing to go to extreme lengths to protect her daughters, but this is not used by the sisters, so to speak. By what I mean is when their mother finds out what they have been doing, like covering up murders, instead of being responsible and saying, okay, let's go to the police with you and we sort this all out, she's like, I burned down the house and fuck my husband, the marriages, and we're going down, so we're just gonna all escape. Now, aside from that, the film has pretty good humor. It's very morbid, very dark. It's not for everyone, certainly, and I enjoyed it. And I can say I enjoyed it because I'm such a person who likes dark, morbid humor, who can talk with his mother in the train about death and shit in a really fucked up way without being bothered by it. But I think, like, what must other people think about us, Anyway, at the heart of every good supernatural story, be it with vampires or werewolves, it's not really about them, It's about the emotion, the heart, and the characters, and you have to deliver on that fact. And since Emily Perkins and Catherine have so much chemistry, this tale of those two sisters is very believable. And there's even a scene that I would like to highlight, not in the video itself or in the footage, but I'm just gonna tell you, towards the climax, which is very good, very claustrophobic, and takes place in the Fitzgerald house. Now, I haven't mentioned, but Fitzgerald is their family's name. Bridget has both the cure for the werewolf and a knife in her hand, and this is sort of the duality that she offers her full transformed sister, either death or cure. It's interesting symbolism, and in the end she has to kill her sister. I just wanted to highlight that. I don't know how much thought the filmmakers put into that, but it's sort of a symbolism between life and death, similar to how you get the scene in the Planet of the Apes film. Was it in Germany? It was called Revolution, but I mean the first one of the reboots, where Will offers Caesar back home, but on one hand, Caesar is much more freer in his cage, the animal resort, because Will holds a leash in his hand, and that would mean to go back into servitude. So either he's completely free or he's going back to a place that's familiar but also kind of a prison. Okay, I've talked far too long and I have to do a lot of editing, and that's gonna be it. I will not leave any rating for this film, just a recommendation to see it for yourself.
Okay, fuckity bye.